So, The Monkey is based on the short story by Stephen King, and this adaptation is directed by Osgood Perkins. And Perkins really, he looked at this short story, and he basically, the easiest way to describe this film is just that Perkins looked at the story and said, screw it. Let's tell some jokes. Let's, like, sure, the premise of this story is about, contemplating, like, mortality and how, death, it seems like some evil that we can't really contain or define. They're, very familiar themes for, a lot of different horror films there. But hey, you know what? Why don't we just laugh at death? And I feel like that's almost kind of like a, it's kind of like a crazy approach to take, because, like, it's a bit of a gamble. If you take the story and you have fun with it, like, it can go one of two ways. It can either be annoying in its attempts to, have fun with the material, or it can seem like a laugh riot, just like having so much fun with the material and laughing at all the ridiculous, over the top and abundant deaths that come with this scenario. And I think the film is very much polarizing on that wavelength. Like, you either have to be engaged with, like, this as a comedy, and you have to go into it knowing it's a comedy. Otherwise, you're gonna hate this film. If you're not on board for the tongue-in-cheek, gross out, over-the-top gore and ridiculous nature of the characters with very much, tongue-in-cheek delivery, if you're not on board for that, you're not gonna love this film. So the premise of the film is that these two twin brothers, Hal and Bill Shelburne, have happened upon this toy symbol monkey, where if they turn the crank, the monkey, they've turned the little crank in the back, the monkey will start drumming along, and once it finishes its song, somebody will die. Somebody at random. They don't know who, they can't choose, the monkey doesn't take requests, just you turn the key, the drums start sometimes, and then someone dies either immediately or following a little bit later. And usually it's a pretty gruesome death. Like, there are some fairly tragic ones, but most of them are pretty damn ridiculous. Like, people's guts get torn out, people's heads get decapitated, and it shocks Hal and Bill. Both, they're played by the same actor when they're kids, played by Christian Convery, but then they grow up and they're both played by Theo James. Now, Hal is supposed to be our protagonist here because, he very much wants to not use the monkey, whereas Bill really does. And they basically decide, look, this is too dangerous. A lot of people are going to get hurt. We should try to just, like, bury this thing. Because they realize they can't destroy the monkey. It just comes back, much like death. You can't contain it. It's going to happen. So all you can really do is just bury it and forget about it and not use its powers. But then time passes, and then, the two brothers grow up, even though they've grown apart, they're brought back together by the monkey, because they realize more strange deaths start happening in their hometown, and, they just realize something's up. So, Hal, now with his almost grown-up son, venture back to his hometown to try to solve the mystery of the monkey. So that's the general premise, and just everything after that is just over-the-top, absurd, ridiculous deaths. It's just rapid succession of people being ground up or diced up into hamburger meat in the most absurd ways possible. Like, they get electrocuted and they blow up into chunks. They get shotgun blasts to the face. Just all these ridiculous deaths. And you know what? It honestly kind of worked for me. I do think it wears out its welcome a little bit as it goes along. I think once you get used to the overall flow of it, you kind of hope there's, like, a little bit more of a contemplation on mortality that comes with all the giddy and goofy gore. And there is a little bit of that, just enough. It's not much of a deep contemplation. In fact, it's kind of very much on the nose by the end of the film, the way that it's like Hal almost, like, literally stares at the Grim Reaper. But you know what? For trying as hard as Perkins does for just jokes with this material, I think he does fairly well by keeping everything very tongue-in-cheek, where it doesn't feel like anyone's trying too hard for laughs in most of the scenes, and it's just, presenting ridiculous characters thrown into these situations. Like, Hal is very much supposed to be the straight man here, but he's a straight man in the sense that he doesn't realize the ridiculous scenarios he's in, because at one point, like, he's shouting at his son, like, trying to protect him, and it feels like I said, Perkins is just trying for jokes here, where at one point Hal just screams at his son, make like an egg and scramble, and he screams it with such volume and force that you can't help but laugh at just the line and the delivery here. And not to mention all the other contributing actors here, like Adam Scott shows up for a brief role where he wields a flamethrower on the monkey. Elijah Wood shows up as this weirdo guru who literally tries to steal the parental energy out of Hal, which is, again, like all these, like Adam Scott and Elijah Wood, they're only in this film for one scene. But they do their best to eat up that scene with how ridiculous of a scenario that they've been thrown into. And you know, it works for me, I think, in general when you consider the premise, because, you know, if death is so present and everyone is just dying in these kind of like almost pretty similar to like Final Destination type of deaths, you kind of have to laugh at it. Like, not even just for like the editing, which is hilarious, or the gore effects, which are pretty entertaining, but also just the general idea. Like, you know, mortality is not something you could generally stop or control, and, you know, you could die at any moment, and probably in the most ridiculous ways. So a part of you just has to laugh at that. And I think Perkins just embraces that just full-throated throughout this entire film. And it really, you know, for me, on like an existential level, it actually really worked at trying to find the humor in that situation. It does go pretty over the top in what it ends up doing with Bill kind of becoming more of the antagonist, but there's some fairly good payoffs there. Like, I love how there's one pretty good gag that they set up with skydiving weddings, and the punchline arrives at the most unexpected moment. And just it arrives just to remind you, like, oh yeah, there was this bit they set up earlier, and there are a few other characters that they set up for gags, like the perky real estate agent, and Hal's boss, whose only catchphrase seems to be "that sucks" while he keeps getting stoned. There's also this down on his luck kid who tries to fire a gun and is like a terrible shot with trying to like assault Hal. All these, you know, like ridiculous moments, and like they're played up for comedy, but they're not trying too hard. It feels like they're most of the actors are just kind of like, you know, embracing the script that they're given, and just almost kind of like standing back and letting the ridiculousness of the situation, of the gore and the violence, kind of like take over, and just reacting to it in a ridiculous, if not human way, that one would try to deal with the fact that, you know, there's no way you can stop this evil monkey from determining your fate. Like I said, very polarizing. You have to be willing to go into this film as a comedy. I know, like, the advertising has been a little deceptive about making it seem a little bit scary and a little bit gross and gory, and it is gory, but it is ridiculous. You have to be in the mood for this film to be jokes, very much unlike Stephen King's short story novel. But yeah, could it have been a good film if it took itself seriously and focused more on the contemplation of containing evil? I think it could, but Perkins, I think, would have to find something deeper to explore within that material, which I don't doubt that he could. But I think, you know, after something as, you know, dark as Longlegs, and I think for as much like almost unintentional camp there was in Longlegs, I think it does good on Perkins to kind of lean into this, you know, ridiculous type of gory, absurd horror fest with this material. So yeah, it's not as strong as it could be for evoking this material, but you know what, for just, you know, having fun with the monkey, I think Perkins makes it work. You know, I had a lot of chuckles and fun just watching people get ground up into hamburger meat. So on that level, yeah, the monkey is a lot of fun.